Welcome to the Holding Time podcast, where we share inspiring stories from remarkable mothers who participated in the Holding Time project in Bradford. Each episode, we explore their unique breastfeeding stories, the highs, the lows, the challenges and the triumphs. Whether you're expecting, a new parent, or simply curious, we invite you to hear from these resilient warrior women as they share their experiences. Find out more at holdingtime.org.
I am Victoria and this is Leonidas. He is hiding. He is 20 months now and our eldest is at school and he's Carlos.
Are you a stay-at-home mum? Are you at home full-time or are you working, juggling?
So I was made redundant in April.
I'm sorry.
So it was kind of the right time, to be honest, because we were sort of at a crossroads with work and what was going to happen with the contract. And I did feel that sort of setting off at 5 a.m. was really early. And what I was going to do with both my children. My husband, he's like a superhero. He would just literally just do everything. And he was amazing. But it was just, the missing the school drop-offs was a shame. And sometimes I'd miss a pickup. And then I wasn't getting to do my eldest gymnastics club or taekwondo or swimming.
Yeah.
So it came at the right time, which was really lucky. We decided that I would have a little bit of a break because I'd worked for 12 years in a basement. So there was no natural light, no daylight, fully air-conditioned building. And it was a bit stagnant. And I thought, I've been in there 40 hours a week, 12 years. I'm going to see some daylight. So we thought I'd just take the summer off. But actually, what I've done is I've started my own business for bookkeeping and accounting. And now I'm working 3 days a week, just subcontracting.
And it's okay to have a year where you just recalibrated it.
Exactly.
If you spend how many years in that basement, 40 hours a week, with 2 small children, I think you've done
it was time.
It
was definitely time. And do you know what was really nice? The building that we were in, I was again subcontracted into that building. So it wasn't my building, which meant that it was third-party supplier. So even though I was under the same umbrella as other staff, it was really difficult to get access to sort of like the breastfeeding room.
Really?
And a little lounge and things, because if your name wasn't on the list. But because I was a subby, I had to be approved by different types of other subbies, which came under a different umbrella, and they didn't even know me. And I was like, I have access to the breastfeeding room. And they'd be like, but who are you? I was like, I've only worked here 12 years.
Wow.
So it was really difficult sometimes to get access to the breastfeeding room. I mean, luckily the area that I was in, we had a little side room with a fridge and things. And my team, they were absolutely fantastic. I'd be like, I'm off in the room. I'd go in there with a little pump and what have you. And they were really accommodating. So that was okay. But yeah, it was a struggle to get access. And one day my boobs were that big.
Oh, you poor thing.
It was horrendous. And they were like, but your name's not on the list. I was like, oh my dude, just give me the key.
Oh, for God's sake.
Key. I was like, we don't need any red tape on this. Are you serious?
Yeah.
So I ended up texting one of the directors upstairs and I was like, you're just going to have to come down and get this key for me. So he came down and he's like, I have the breastfeeding room key. And he said nothing to him and passed the key. And off I went.
It is a bodily function, isn't it? Like you've got milk in your boobs, you need to get it out. Why on earth are they making some sort of big deal about giving you a key? That is so insane. It should be like even someone visiting the building should be allowed to use that room.
Exactly. I mean, it was just so bizarre that I had to get approval from somebody else and they had to get approval from somebody else. And then it had to come back down the chain and then an email had to be sent whilst my boobs were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then my breast pads are just, giving up and
oh my God.
Milk dripping down my top. And I was like, can you see this? Like, can you, I will have to go home now. So in end up, I went an express because I thought I can't drive home like this.
Yeah.
And then went and found a shower and luckily I've got a locker, with a change of clothes. But, the feeling of sort of not degrading, but where's the logic? So if the other receptionist had been on, she'd have just given me the key. She wouldn't have thought twice about it. But this other receptionist that likes procedures and who could be a little bit hard work didn't give me the key and was like, well, until I've got the email. And then, the director had to come down. So it was the weight of the director that shifted the situation. And he just came down and was like, you giving her the key then? off she pops, and that was it. Done. I was like, but I stood there for, 10 minutes, losing my mind. How am I going to get this key? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Where's the fridge? I didn't have a fridge in my area at the time. I was starting to panic a little bit, that I'm in agony, and I can't really go and I can't go and express, I suppose, at a Costa Cafe, where they, they promote breastfeeding, but I don't think they want me really to be plugging in my breast pump.
It's a funny kind of contradiction, isn't it? Because they'd be quite happy for you to feed a baby in there.
Yes,
I say this as someone who had I had to express for 4 months, and whereas all my friends that breastfed were able to go out and about, I was stuck at home because I couldn't take this great big machine with me where I was going, and I had to express like every 3 hours. So you could only really get into town, and you have to get home again before you express again.
Yeah, and so, those new ones that have come about that, they strap to you, the handless ones that are battery operated. Now, they're fantastic. I was looking at one of those because I thought, I could just walk around whilst I'm expressing, at the same time. But actually, I really like the sitting down and doing nothing whilst I'm expressing sort of situation, which was different to, walking around and doing the dishes or walking around at work, expressing at the same time. So, but I liked being restricted to the chair, sitting down with a cup of tea, bottle of water, because I was a bit weird about it. I needed to clean the surfaces. I needed to clean the chair. I had to put a throw over it if I'm not at home.
A bit of a ritual surrounding
exactly, it. And with Carlos, my eldest, it was COVID times as well. So, cleaning the rooms, etc. was huge for me. So, and then if people are putting food in there, are they going to touch my little packet of breast milk, or are they not going to touch it? Are they going to be grown-ups about this, or are they not going to be grown-ups about this? Because there was every walk of life in this building.
It's not a separate fridge for breast milk, because that really should be
not that one.
What
it should have been, but other people that had access to the area. So the breastfeeding room was separate, but the sort of communal area down that corridor where there was like a team of physiotherapists, they had access to the storage room, which would be your fridge. So they would, put the yogurts and the lunch and things. That was really interesting. I could breastfeed in private, but then I walked down the corridor with my little bag and put it in the fridge. So I had to get a lunchbox to put my milk into my lunchbox and put that into the fridge just in case anyone was like, oh, there's some milk there for my coffee. But it was very interesting that, I was the thoughts of, will somebody touch my milk that I'm going to feed to my baby? It's a little bit unnerving, because I don't trust everybody, to have the same sort of respect that I would have for somebody else's belongings.
I can understand that actually, because having expressed a lot for a long time, and that was like the only way that I was feeding my daughter for months. There's a certain weird kind of vulnerability about that milk in that bottle, isn't there?
There is.
It's a strange thing to express to other people, but now you're talking about it, I really understand what you mean. There's a really feeling, it's like something from inside your body that is outside your body and is visible and plain for people to see. And there's a lot of kind of taboo around bodily fluids. I don't mean this in a debased kind of way, but it's a little bit like having a urine sample in the fridge or something, isn't it? You don't really want people looking. You don't want people looking at it.
No.
And I feel like that about anything that sort of comes out of my body, really. I don't want to share that visually with other people.
No.
And so I can understand why you'd put it in a lunchbox to sort of disguise it.
Disguise it, because, like the thought of, oh, we know what you've been doing. Well, that's private. That's between myself and my baby,
it's
my husband.
Intimate. It's an intimate bodily fluid that you don't
and for
really
them
want
to know.
Yeah.
No, and you just think, then you've got to walk down the corridor with your little bag, and then it's enough having to take a bag with you, with your little expressing machine in, and, is everything sanitized? You've got your little bottle of Dettol spray as well, and all of that, and the whole sort of situation around expressing, would take like an hour, and, sweating and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then get back down to your office and what have you, or whatever I was doing that afternoon, and have you leaked? Are you dry? Is everything okay? To wander off, put it in the fridge, and then get back down to work again after you've just expressed. And it was weird because I thought it's really sort of a distance type of feeding. And I know that I'm going to get that milk back to him. And sometimes it was only relief, that I would express, because my boobs were just massive. It's not that he needed the milk later because I still had enough milk, but it was just a case of that just felt so far away from where my baby is. And can he, that feeling, the euphoria when you breastfeed. I was getting it when I was expressing as well, but he wasn't there to snug, which made it really kind of separated. So the distance for me of where my baby was in comparison to where I was I sort of resented having to express and not be with him and having to go through the whole trauma of remembering everything, sanitizing everything, putting everything in a lunchbox and putting it in a fridge that I don't trust the other occupants of the building entirely, was quite a challenge, mentally.
Yeah. There's a really beautiful painting by an artist. I think she's called Caroline Walker, and it's of a tray and it contains all the Medela bottles and pump stuff. And it's like she's washed it up. One of those little enamel dishes that you might do an apple crumble in, but she's put her expressing things in there and it's sitting on the side of the sink. And she did this beautiful still life of it. I'll see if I can find it and send it to you. But it really contains a lot of that feeling of the intimacy around expressing the absence of the baby and the feelings that you have around this sort of extension of the breastfeeding relationship into this pumping experience. And I'm really interested to ask you, would there be a way of feeling closer to your baby that you would use in that room, let's say at work? Would you bring up photos of your baby, or would there be any visual stimulation that you'd use?
I'd have my phone on my laptop with me, and I'd think I'd have great ideas about going up to to express, and I'll do some emails whilst I'm up there, in the silence and things, or I'll sit back and have a little snooze, or 10 minutes to myself. But actually, what I ended up doing was, and it's really funny you should say that, on my laptop I downloaded a load of photos of the small humans. And I would spend an hour just scrolling through all of these photographs of the small humans whilst expressing. And I don't know if it made me feel closer, but it definitely made me feel more settled and with him rather than sort of, away from him. It made me feel more comforted. And I think it was about my comfort rather than his comfort.
I must just ask you quickly, how old was he when you went back to work? So what was the youngest age?
Between 10 and 11 months.
Okay, yeah. It's comfort, but it's also oxytocin, isn't it? Like what you're doing is you're raising your oxytocin levels so that your milk production is more efficient, really. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, definitely.
I set up a feeding station. I had like double mastitis. I had to relactate. The pump was like my lifesaver because she couldn't digest formula. She lost loads of weight. She started to shrink and look like a little weird monkey. It was awful. It was really distressing. I just went from like pumping every 2 hours. Oh God, it was so exhausting. This is like day 10. I had to start pumping every 2 hours and waking myself up to do it. And it was brutal, and the whole sort of bottles and all of that. But what I did to help was I had this really beautiful sheepskin rug, and I set up this kind of feeding station with a bouncy chair, and I'd put her in the bouncy chair, and I'd sit in a really comfortable sort of snuggly kind of cushiony thing on the floor, and I'd have the pump. And I'd bounce her, and once I got it going, I'd feed her the bottle from when I'd expressed earlier that day, the last express. I'd give her that while I pumped the milk for the next one. So I sort of created a psychological link between the pumping and the bottle
and
feed.
The feeding at the same time.
As close as I could possibly make it while looking at her.
That's beautiful.
But it was
definitely.
I really know what you mean about the separation, because I was in the same room as her. I was sitting opposite her, and I still felt this pain of separation. Yeah. And it was just because she was a meter away and not on my breast, So to get however you got to work, to bring all that stuff with you, to do a morning's work or whatever, and then go into a room and then try to pump milk. It's even if it's like 9 months to a year after you've established that relationship, It's still a hard thing to do. It's still quite a big thing to do, isn't it? And women talk to me all the time about stopping breastfeeding when they go back to work. And I always say to them, like, you don't need to stop. But actually, these are the logistical problems that actually are really overwhelming.
Totally.
How many times a day would you need to do that when you first went back to work? Would it be like twice a day or?
It would be quite frequent actually, because he was a big cluster feeder, weren't you?
Yeah.
So it was continuous actually. It was really frequent just to keep my boobs at a relative size that weren't painful. Yeah. So, and because it was a little bit nerve-wracking and I'm in a strange environment, I found sort of more frequent, do less, sort of ounces on the breast pumping, and then have, sort of more bags of breast milk in the freezer. So I would probably I'd aim to do it about every hour.
Really? Wow.
Just to make sure I was getting everything sorted.
You mentioned about COVID. So give me the timeline in terms of like, when did you give birth and where was it in terms of the different lockdowns?
So that was Carlos. So that was my eldest. I had him in the April, and then the COVID came. When did COVID come?
The first lockdown was March 2020.
Right. So so I was back at work. So I had him. So the lockdown came and we worked through the first set of the lockdown because we were frontline and they tried to keep us at work. So my company was private healthcare. So I went to work at like COVID centres, and I was doing some night shifts as well, which was really good. But then they decided to furlough us all, and we all literally just went home. And they put in place sort of the staff from the multiple sites out of the corporate sector and put those into sort of the hospital settings to take up the slack and things, which didn't have, babies and things like that. So they sort of moved the priority list to make sure that, I would be okay, Carlos would be okay. My husband was frontline worker as well. The way we looked at it was that I was extremely fortunate in comparison to a lot of families trying to juggle COVID and how that all worked with their, children and things like that. But luckily, my team, we got furloughed. So I was able to continue feeding from home, which was really lucky from my point of view. But obviously it was horrific, and that I couldn't be part of the team to, work in the hospitals and help everybody, which was really sad because I wanted to do that. But the risk posed to, a breastfeeding mom, and if I was to fall ill, would I, have the milk? There wasn't enough knowledge and information that if I was to be poorly, would I still be able to feed my baby, and would he, still be okay at quite a young age?
Obviously, I'm talking to mothers with small children every day, and what I'm hearing is that was a time of insane worry for anyone with a small child.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was worrying. Me wanting to go and help, just because of my occupation and, what was in me was to go and help. But the business, sort of took that away and said, actually, we're not putting anyone at risk.
You're a bit too high risk, yeah.
Yeah, it's optional if you want to come. But actually what we're saying to you is, we don't want you here. Go home, be with your baby, look after your small human. Your husband's frontline as it is. You've got enough to do. It's not fair for me to look after the small human during the day and then go and work nights where I would be working would have been high risk. And they said, it's just not the right environment for you. So I said, okay, off I went, and I did some administration duties from home and things and supported that way. But it wasn't frontline like I wanted to be.
I'm happy to hear that you had employers who were caring about you and looking out for you.
Yeah. They were really good. And the thing about the role that I was in at the time, because of the nature of the employment, I could reach 5,000 people plus, like the organization is absolutely ginormous, who I was contracting for. So I was able to reach out and say, let's hold meetings about mental health, well-being, fitness, stress, repetitive stress injuries, breastfeeding. And we got in a consultant from one of the hospitals, and she actually came in and we went through the whole breastfeeding thing. Then we went to sleep, then we did adolescence, and then we went into the change, in HRT. And she delivered a seminar on women's health and then a seminar on men's health as well. I'd got a different consultant in for that as well. And he delivered another
amazing.
seminar. And then we started with Andy's Man Club, and they came in and they did huge seminars. So we were hosting it, and you're sweating, you're breastfeeding, you're pumping, and then you're hosting a seminar to thousands of people, live streaming, hoping everything goes right. You hope your boobs aren't
Yeah.
leaking. To support, everybody as much as we possibly can. How many people have been outside today? How many people have spoken to anybody other than their cat
Yeah.
today?
Yeah.
Simple things like, do you need me to drop you anything off? I'm out and about, so simple things like that. But it really did help that, some parents were at home, were breastfeeding, but didn't have the opportunity like I had to go to breastfeeding groups, like one, for example, in Brighouse with a wonderful peer called Sue, who now works at Calderdale Royal Hospital on the maternity ward. They didn't have that support. And as much as the online ones were absolutely brilliant, they didn't have that connection, whereas they knew me, they knew my face. So when we held sort of, little clubs and things, from book reading to breastfeeding, it was really nice that, moms would come on and, they would be online and we would have a chat and we would have an hour on a call and all the mums would feed at the same time. And it was absolutely brilliant. It was really good. Wasn't it,
I
Mister?
mean, yeah, do you think that's something that mothers would still do if it was available? Because there's a lot of things in lockdown that were kind of available that then disappeared that were
And it
quite good.
disappeared again. I thought the online option was absolutely brilliant. Nobody was there serving me tea and biscuits, and saying, "Do you want a top up?" Which was absolutely brilliant. But just the thought of, oh, it's 1 o'clock, he's going to have a feed, I'm going to settle down, I'm going to have a little chat, and people are going to pull up a chair and stop for half an hour or an hour. I think it would be, a lovely option for people that can't drive, like yourself, that were pumping, that the 3 hour turnaround of doing something would be logistically horrendous, whereas actually you just pop your phone on the shelf and have your call with somebody else breastfeeding. I think it should have continued, and it's a shame it didn't continue to be. I think this guy had a tongue tie when he was born, so I'd gone 9 days with a tongue tied baby, and boobs bleeding and everything.
Well, that's how.
And
that was my problem.
Oh, it was horrendous, but I didn't get mastitis. But what I did do was, it was really good. I went to see a lady called Ria, who was like the
I know
breastfeeding lady. Do you know what? Oh,
I mean, she's
amazing.
Literally, Ria is mentioned by everybody in Bradford. She deserves some sort of
really?
award.
She does.
She is
She absolutely
just
does.
unbelievable.
She's phenomenal.
She's
phenomenal.
so passionate. She's so knowledgeable. It's really interesting because I think there's kind of a Ria in every district.
She was absolutely extraordinary because I went there and she was obsessed with this little guy instantly because he's just beautiful. I'm only joking. She's obsessed with every baby. And she just said, because I had so much milk because of the tongue tie, she said, oh, this is going to hurt. She got hold of my boob and she's like, you need to get the milk out. Get to the hind milk. And she's just, you've had your nook. And she's just expressing and expressing and expressing, but hand expressing for me. And the release of brilliant. And she just did it for me. She was like, it's not weird. It's absolutely fine. And she had a trainee in with her at the same time. Ria said to her, she said, do you want to go for your break? You've not eaten, it's like 2 o'clock. And she said, no. She says, I'm just going to stay here and watch you for the rest of the day. So this lady would not go for her break because she was just absorbing everything.
She didn't want to miss a minute of Ria's
didn't want to miss
incredible.
Anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So she was phenomenal. But I put the group sort of together and in touch with each other because they'd said, he was okay, but they'd not spot the tongue tie. And I said, well, you didn't get your fingers in his mouth. It's, I completely understand that. I said, but maybe, had you have known about Ria and the services, that you would have done, like sort of referred and gone round in a full circle. So they came to an appointment with me actually, and they were like, oh, brilliant, now we've met and off we pop. So whenever there's anybody that goes to the moms groups and things, the breastfeeding groups, they direct them to Ria, and they've got, phone numbers and emails and things, which is really good now. So we supported that, didn't we, Mister? Hey, we were very pleased.
Great.
It's been brilliant. And take the people that we've met on our way.
It's quite life-changing, isn't it, in a way? You don't really need someone like Ria until you really need someone like Ria. And then you've saved my life. For me, it was a woman called Sue Ayres. And she came to me, I'll never forget, she came to me on Christmas Eve and Boxing Day. it's like Christmas. She spent an hour with me each time. She just got me through that that time that you're describing, that really dark
period.
time. And she got me pumping and she got me feeling better. And then she came back when I had managed to keep going. And I called her back again because I had a breast abscess and I couldn't express after 4. And so it was like, oh, okay, now we have to go to formula. But by then, my daughter had her tongue cut. So we just tried it. We just tried breastfeeding and actually it worked. And Sue came back at that time. She was like pointing at the cot. And my baby was like happy in there sleeping. She said, look what you've done. Look what you've done. And she said, you've grown a baby. You've grown her. That's your milk that's grown her like a pumpkin. It's like magic. You've made, look how big she is. Look how well she is. And it was so incredible just to have that affirmation. She had a lot of knowledge about tongue tie as well. But in the middle of all this confusion, like, she was the one. And there's amazing women like that all over the country, just doing an incredible job, Oh, thanks, Victoria. Well, it's really lovely talking to you.
Have a lovely rest of the day, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Holding Time podcast. We're grateful to everyone involved in this project, including our partners and funders, Bradford District Care Trust and Arts Council England and Better Place Bradford, and all the incredible mothers and families who made it all possible. For more information, visit holdingtime.org. The link is in the episode description. Please like, follow or subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and consider sharing this podcast to help raise awareness and support for breastfeeding.